Clapper's testimony is full of holes. The following quotations of James Clapper and Sally Yates are taken from the Washington Post's May 8th full transcript of Sally Yates and James Clapper testimony on Russian election interference at a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. James Clapper testified to the Senate and said, "As you know, the intelligence community assessment was a coordinated product from 3 agencies, CIA, NSA, and the FBI, not all 17 components of the intelligence community." Counterpoint. This does not agree with the report Clapper submitted in December, nor his public comments. They found that the Russian government pursued a multifaceted influence campaign in the run-up to the election, including aggressive use of cyber capabilities. Counterpoint. There is absolutely no evidence presented for any cyber attacks nor any discussion of such prior to Clapper's remarks. The Russians used cyber operations against both political parties, including hacking into servers used by the Democratic National Committee and releasing stolen data to WikiLeaks and other media outlets. Russia also collected on certain Republican Party-affiliated targets but did not release any Republican-related data. Counterpoint. There has been zero evidence that anyone hacked the Republicans. The intelligence community assessment concluded, first, that President Putin directed and influenced the campaign to erode the faith and confidence of the American people in our presidential election process. Counterpoint. There is no evidence except Dmitry Alperovich's, a private contractor, opinion, which he said was his opinion, that Putin had anything to do with meddling in the election. In Alperovich's words, we learn, Putin did so to demean Secretary Clinton. Putin sought to advantage Mr. Trump. These conclusions were reached based on the richness of the information gathered and analyzed and were thoroughly vetted and then approved by the directors of the 3 agencies and me. Counterpoint. I guess Clapper forgot that James Comey and he have disagreed over these points, and they have said so publicly, and that only CrowdStrike ever looked at the DNC server. On several occasions during my 6.5 years as Director of National Intelligence, I requested the identity of U.S. persons to be revealed. In each such instance, I made these requests so I could fully understand the context of the communication and the potential threat being posed. At no time did I ever submit a request for personal or political purposes or to voyeuristically look at raw intelligence, nor am I aware of any instance of such abuse by anyone else. Counterpoint. We know from descriptions of Clapper's new cloud computing spy system that everyone is unmasked, and that Clapper's remarks about unmasking are a bold-faced lie. I've long maintained during my 50-plus year career in intelligence that leaks endanger national security. They compromise sources, methods, and tradecraft, and they can put assets, lives at risk. And for the record, in my long career, I've never knowingly exposed classified information in an inappropriate manner. Counterpoint. If this is true, why did James Clapper not investigate the massive amounts of leaks? During my tenure as Director of National Intelligence, it was my practice to defer to the FBI Director, both Director Mueller and then subsequently Director Comey, on whether, when, and to what extent they would inform me about such investigations. This stems from the unique position of the FBI, which straddles both intelligence and law enforcement, and as a consequence, I was not aware of the counterintelligence investigation Director Comey first referred to during his testimony before the House Permanent Select Committee for Intelligence on the 20th of March, and that comports with my public statements. Counterpoint. Clapper oversees the FBI and the Department of Justice intelligence agencies, and especially counterintelligence, and it would be a dereliction of his duties to be uninformed about an investigation about Trump or Russians meddling in the election. These are simply more spy lies to cover the lies of America's spying and lying agencies. In conclusion, Russia's influence activities in the run-up to the 2016 election constituted the high watermark of their long-running efforts since the 1960s to disrupt and influence our elections. They must be congratulating themselves for having exceeded their wildest expectations with a minimal expenditure of resources. And I believe they are now emboldened to continue such activities in the future, both here and around the world, and to do so even more intensely. If there has ever been a clarion call for vigilance and action against a threat to the very foundation of our democratic political system, this episode is it. I hope the American people recognize the severity of this threat and that we collectively counter it before it further erodes the fabric of our democracy. Counterpoint. There was no previous Russian hacking of elections now or in the past, and there is no evidence in any report that shows that Clapper's fear tactics aren't simply more propaganda. Remember, Clapper has already said publicly that there was no Russian interference in the election. In testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee on May 8, 2017, Senator Chuck Grassley questions Sally Yates and James Clapper. Grassley. Okay, I want to discuss unmasking. Mr. Clapper and Ms. Yates, did either of you ever request the unmasking of Mr. Trump, his associates, or any member of Congress? Clapper. Yes, in one case I did that I can specifically recall, but I can't discuss it any further than that. Grassley. Question 2. Did either of you ever review classified documents in which Mr. Trump, his associates, or members of Congress had been unmasked? Clapper. Yes. Grassley. You have? Can you give us details here in this? Clapper. No, I can't. Grassley. Ms. Yates, have you? Yates. Yes, I have, and no, I can't give you details. Grassley. The FBI notified the Democratic National Committee of the Russians' intrusion into their systems in August of 2015, but the DNC turned down the FBI's offer to get the Russians out and refused the FBI access to their servers. Instead, it eventually hired a private firm in the spring of 2016. WikiLeaks began releasing the hacked DNC emails last July. It took roughly 27,000 of the 27,500 DNC emails it released were emails sent after the FBI notified the DNC of the breach. Mr. Clapper, would you agree that one of the lessons of this episode is that people should cooperate with the FBI when notified of foreign hacks instead of stonewalling? Clapper, yes, sir. I generally think that's a very good idea. Grassley, Mr. Clapper, you said the Russians did not release any negative information on Republican candidates. I believe that that's not quite right. On June 15, 2016, Guccifer 2.0 released to Gawker and The Smoking Gun more than 200 pages of the DNC's opposition research on Mr. Trump, hundreds of pages of what I would call dirt. This happened just 2 days after the Wall Street Journal published a plan for Republican convention delegates to revolt to prevent Mr. Trump from securing the nomination. Why wasn't the Russian release of harmful information about Mr. Trump addressed in the Russia report? And was this even evaluated during the review? Clapper, I would have to consult with the analysts that were involved in the report to definitively answer that. I don't know personally whether they considered that or not. Counterpoint. The many lies involved in the quotes that I just read are too many to address, but I'm sure you have noticed that Clapper never says the same thing twice, and therefore his lies are profoundly obvious. Clapper said in March that he had seen no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. During the hearing, he added a huge caveat that he did not know about any ongoing FBI counterintelligence investigation into whether there was collusion. But Clapper said any evidence from that investigation was apparently not sufficient to include in their assessment on January 5th, when 3 intelligence agencies issued a statement that Russian President Vladimir Putin had interfered with the U.S. elections against Clinton. Clapper said under oath, the evidence, if there was any, didn't reach the evidentiary bar in terms of the level of confidence that we were striking for in that intelligence community assessment. Counterpoint. Thus, Even though there was an investigation he did not know about, it did not provide good enough evidence to be included in any assessment that he would have known about. Clapper also later told Grassley that he had no reason to believe that any agency withheld any relevant information from him. He said there was also not enough evidence of a Trump business interest in Russia to put into the intelligence community's assessment by the time he left in January. The intelligence community could not corroborate the Trump dossier that was reportedly used as the basis of a FISA warrant on former Trump foreign policy advisor Carter Page, and as the roadmap for the FBI's investigation on Trump. Clapper also said the dossier, produced by ex-British spy Christopher Steele and paid for by anti-Trump and pro-Clinton donors, could not be corroborated. We couldn't corroborate the sourcing, particularly the second, third-order sources, Clapper testified. Counterpoint: it was all confabulation that was unauthenticated and unverified. Clapper revealed that he had requested the unmasking of both a Trump associate and a member of Congress at least once each. He also said he didn't know who unmasked Flynn, meaning he had unmasked a different Trump associate. Since Clapper had left office on January 20th, this means the Trump associate he had requested the unmasking for was a Trump campaign or transition team official, again confirming Trump's assertion that Trump Tower was being surveilled. It also implies that someone else in the short chain of command unmasked Trump associate names, even beyond the White House unmasking them through the White House SCIF by Susan Rice. The articles presented here do not necessarily reflect our position on their respective points of view. Our goal is to present the top stories the mainstream media are reporting, which more often than not are skewed to serve the left's agenda. This is why we encourage our viewers to take advantage of the regular intelcasts we offer. It is through the outstanding political analysis of our own Betsy and Thomas, together with their interviews of U.S. intelligence insiders, that we endeavor to help our viewers make sense of the political landscape.